Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at Etsy and we're going to project out the revenue through 2030, and then we'll have a follow-up video probably in the coming days building out the full DCF. And we may do one on operating expenses, but I think their operating expenses are probably pretty straightforward. But when I look a little bit further into that, maybe I'll make a video on it specifically. But first thing, if we open up their most recent 10K, and that's what I'll be using, I'm sure they have a more recent Q, but the K provides us a lot of the really good detail. So that's what we'll be using to kind of base our high level assumptions. So first thing, let's go to the MD&A and I'll show you where I pulled together the schedule. You'll see the first chart they give us is GMS. So this is the volume of sales they do through their platform. So it's not how much revenue they collect, it's like how much merchandise is sold on their platform, and then they take a commission of it, right? That's kind of the idea here. And they actually break their revenue out into two pieces. They have marketplace revenue and then services revenue. So what's interesting here is services revenue. If you kind of read down in here, it sounds like it's mostly going to be driven from kind of like basically advertising. So they make money when sellers make money, right? But paid services and tools specifically designed to help our creative entrepreneurs generate more sales. So my idea is the services growth is, or services revenue is really basically just a advertising revenue, right? If you want to pay to have like a promoted item on Etsy. So I think it's important to understand the difference between that and the marketplace revenue, whereas the marketplace revenue is just direct commission from the gross merchandising sales. So once we have that kind of figured out, they break out, they give us GMS by new and current users. Now, I don't know how useful that really is. I don't know if that's going to play too much of a part in our forecast, but right, we can see they kind of, if you read through here, they break it out. And they have another chart as well down here where they break some more of it out. But what they do give us also is active sellers and buyers up in this chart, which is important to note, looking at how many sellers are added to the platform and then how many buyers are coming to the platform every year. On top of that, they give us percent mobile GMS. I don't really care too much about this. This is just saying like people are buying from their phone or their iPad versus a desktop computer. So, maybe you could infer something that this is targeting a younger generation or there's just more cell phone penetration. Um, when I read that, I was like, I'm sure there's a reason why it's in here, but it wasn't clicking for me. So I'll probably ignore that. International. So this is two parts. If you read through it, this is actually going to be if either the seller is international or the buyer has an international address, so anything outside the US, but it doesn't tell us which is which. So they don't give us like percent international seller and then percent international buyer. So I think it would be interesting to see that makeup of like, is this just a couple large sellers on the platform that are located out of China or somewhere where manufacturing is cheap? Or is this people in Europe actually buying products from Etsy? You can't really deconvolute that. So for now, we're not really going to be able to build an international versus US based model. Something else they give us is they give us the total new buyers each year on the platform. And so what we can do from this, we can, and they actually don't give it to us in the 2017 one. I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. But in these ones, one of the first lines they have under this growth and retention, right? During 2020, Etsy had 38 million new Etsy buyers. So if we know they had 38 new buyers and we know they have 82 million total buyers, which is given to us in their active buyers, right? The difference is there's 44 million current buyers. So meaning that they've purchased something in a previous year. Now, the reason why this is important is if we extrapolate this out on past years, we can calculate a churn rate. So the way we do this is we're saying, right, this 44 million is current buyers. So it's anyone that bought something in 2019. 2019, they had 46 million buyers. If only 44 million of them repurchased something this year, then that means they had a 5% churn. But if we look at the numbers, for example, for 2019 and 18, it's not as good of a picture, right? So in 2017, we know there's 33 million total buyers, and only 22 million of them bought something again in 2018. So, and something similar in 2019, right? There was 40 million and only 27 bought something again. So churn rates in the 30%, that's high, that's a lot, and that's scary. from a business perspective. That means every year, right, you have to generate, you're expected to grow your user base, but you're losing a third of it every year. So you have to have a lot of people coming back every year. So I think, when I first saw this, I was like, this is telling me that Etsy historically has been this place where you go and you find like a unique gift one time for someone and you buy it, and then you probably never go back to Etsy, which just isn't, what I mean? You don't want to be the place you shop at one time to buy someone a gift and then kind of never go back to it. You want your customers coming back. So I think forecasting this out is going to be tough. And, I'm sure the way I forecast it, it might make a few people upset, but we'll see. And then they also have another thing that's multiple purchase buyers. So of their total buyers, what percentage of them are buying more than one time a year? So that's good. It's approaching 50%, right? So almost 50%. So half of their user base, probably the current users for the most part, are regularly going back and buying stuff. So I think that's a good sign. This is trending in the right direction to make me believe that things are going well. So the first thing I think we need to look at is first just kind of, we'll take a look at GMS growth on the platform. Um, and this is one of those things where it's going to be tough to understand the difference between what was COVID related and what wasn't. Um, right, they had, there we go. It's like, why is that 100%? Right, they've had, 20%, 25%, and then during COVID, 100% growth. How much of this, and, we can look at it, right? Like active sellers is, just about doubled as well. So there's a lot more sellers on the platform and they're selling a lot more. So that is a good sign. A lot more products being offered from a lot more people. The buyer base increased. Um, Something interesting to note that they actually call out in here. I don't remember where I found this, but they specifically mentioned that they are expecting a decline in face mask sales going forward. Now, the only reason to call that out specifically in your 10K is if face mask sales are a material portion of your business, right? Like if face mask sales of their total revenue of 1.7 billion revenue, if face masks were $10 million, you're not going to note that face masks were going to decrease, right? Like to get a call out in a 10K, and maybe I can find this. I'm sure, oh, let me go over to the PDF. Right, like, yeah, right here, we operate 50 different retail categories based on GMS, inclusive of masks. Homeware, home furnishings, jewelry, personal care, craft supplies, mask sales at 743 million. So they list out what, one, two, three, four, five, call it six, seven categories in masks they specifically call out. So are they doing, right, of their GMV, this is probably 200 million in GMV in beauty and personal care that excludes masks. Um, let's see. I was trying to find the comment where they said masks, they expect it to go away. Um, yeah, right here. However, we expect demand for certain items like handmade masks to diminish significantly with the rollout of the vaccine and as medical masks become um, available. So I think masks, whether we want to believe it or not, were a very big portion of this driver here. And I actually have a handful of friends that launched Etsy stores selling masks during COVID, and I think a few of them made a few $100,000 selling custom like sports masks with fabric they bought at the store. So if you were an early adopter of the mask, right? So I think a lot of their sales could have been masks, but how much, that's TBD, I guess. Um, and I don't think they give us the actual. So yeah, right here, GMS excluding mask sales for Etsy was 8.7 billion. So they sold 1.5 billion dollars worth of masks, and then they took a 12% cut. So 150 million, 10% of their revenue was mask sales. Um, that's crazy. Um, so I think, as we think about GMS growth, I think right there, right, you're going to have 1.5 billion come out. I would imagine hand sanitizer was, maybe not a billion five of GMS, but was probably a couple hundred million. And other, so realistically, I don't know if they sustain this GMS. And, this is where we could jump on over to their most recent Q. And let's just see if they give us the GMS. So no, I mean, that's a good sign, right? 3 months ended, 3.1 billion of GMS, but that's 3 months ended in March. So you have January, February, March. You're still kind of in the pandemic. But I mean, that looks like you're on pace to hit 12 billion because you haven't even hit the holiday season. Um, that's a good sign. So maybe, maybe they can kind of go back to this 20% growth. Maybe there is this new, you know, I'm going to take 20% for now. Um, and we'll use this as kind of the base case and we'll see if it can sustain. And we'll just kind of see what kind of revenue this gets us out to in 2030. My guess is it's going to be pretty high, which is obviously going to be something interesting to look at, but we'll see here. And then next piece we have to forecast out now is going to be just marketplace revenue as a percent of GMS. So it looks like it's historically averaged 12.4%. So I think for now, let's just leave it at this. I think to be more competitive over time, you have to lower this. I know eBay has always been all over the place of how much should they charge in fees. I'm sure Amazon has a little bit more pricing, like power there to control a higher percentage, but for now, we'll leave it at this. And then service revenue, I think we should actually look at this as, let me add a line here. Per seller. And the reason I say this is like marketing and advertising spend is what they said. Um, so that's like $58 per seller and it's going up. So about $100 per seller on the platform. So that's been growing pretty well. Um, so I think what that's saying is more and more sellers are coming to the marketplace and advertising here and seeing it as an actual way to grow their business. So in this base case, let's just hold it flat. And then we'll have our assumption around growth of active sellers. Because obviously to support higher GMS, you're going to have more sellers. So we'll build that in here in a second. And we could, I think there's a few ways you could model this out, right? Like marketplace revenue, we modeled it out off GMS here. We're saying GMS is going to kind of stay in line with growing because it looks like Q1 is in line. Etsy is going to become more of a staple platform and e-commerce channel, and they're going to slowly be able to catch up. And I think if we, like Amazon didn't give us their GMS, but I think Alibaba was doing like, Was it a couple trillion? I want to say maybe that's just like way off base. And I think they call it GMV. Was it trillion? Yeah. So that's in billion won. So here, wait, let me do it in USD. 6.59 trillion won. What's a won to USD? So that would be 1 trillion USD, right? 6.59 trillion won. So, right, they're doing a trillion, and we're saying we're only going to get up to 68 billion in GMV. So it's, they're still small potatoes in the realm of e-commerce if we look at it from this perspective. Service revenue, right? So service revenue per seller. And then now let's just look at active seller growth. How has this been growing every year? And obviously, yeah, going up pretty significantly, but you know, I think you probably had a lot of small sellers that popped up during the pandemic that will probably fade away if their businesses didn't do so well. But let's just try to get how many sellers on Amazon. That seems low. That seems really low. Um, I mean, maybe that's right. But that just seems weird that Etsy would be at like half as many sellers as Amazon. Let's make sure we read this chart right, right? Active sellers. These numbers are in thousands. So that'd be 4 million sellers. Um, so I guess, I don't know, that doesn't, I'd love to know where they're getting this data. But let's see, Alibaba, 150,000. Wish, 500,000. So I don't know. I don't believe that Amazon data, to be honest, of 9 million sellers. Um, that it seems low, but I guess we'll just kind of go off historical growth rates, which is kind of tough to do because it's been all over the place. But maybe we just pick something. Maybe we just assume like a 15% increase in sellers yearly. Um, I know it seems arbitrary, but I think with that big number from this year, and actually let's see if they give us anything here. Active sellers, 4.7 as of Q1. So they're already slightly up, right? They've already gained 400,000 more sellers. So I think that's a good sign. So that's probably reasonable. And I mean, I don't know if the upper bound makes sense, right? With that Google search saying that Amazon's at 9 million, then I don't think they'd ever hit 17 million. But I guess any individual can sell on Etsy, whereas Amazon, it's probably a little bit harder of a process, potentially. Honestly, not entirely sure, but then we're going to stick with our $96, multiply it out. And so I think this is like one way to get a first pass at revenue. Now, I think there's a few different ways we could look at this. And right, we're going from 1.7 to 10 billion. So, 8xing or 7xing, I guess, in the next decade. Um, and if we just calculate revenue growth, we can kind of look at what that growth rate is historical and future. So I mean, right, 2018, 9.1%, 2019, 35.6%, huge jump in 2020, and then kind of tailing back down to 19, about 20%. Um, Probably reasonable. And interesting to note though is if we look at like the data wasn't exactly great for they didn't experience high growth in 17 to 18, honestly, but then big growth in 18 to 19, pre-COVID. Obviously something clicked. Consumers are going back to Etsy, and then 19 to 20, obviously mass acceleration to Etsy during COVID. Now I think this is one way to look at it. A second way, which maybe I'm knocking them all out because I'm not sure how we'd get to the revenue number, but we could look at average revenue per buyer, try to calculate out, a churn rate to get us the current buyer number going forward. And maybe let's just do that real quick. So it looks like historical churn rate was high, which was not good even in 19, but it looks like it's dropped off. But maybe we just to kind of see what we get at here, we'll just hold to the 5.3. Do that. And then that allows us to calculate our total buy or our, oops. I want this minus, oops. Oh man, this formula's going all over the place. There we go. So I think this is another way you could look at it, right? Is we could calculate out a churn rate. So with no new customers, right, and we leave a 5% churn every year, you're gonna get down to 48. But now I think we need to look at new user growth. Actually, I'll add it here. New buyer growth. Obviously, it wasn't that high that year, but it was very high last year. Makes it tough, right? I mean, you can't really. Do they give us the new users so far in Q1? Let's see if they give us that. I don't know if they give us that nice little chart. New buyer GMS. So if GMS in Q1 is up 140, I mean, that's hard to, active buyers, let's just look at this, right? Q1, there's 91 million active buyers, that works, minus the 78. So that would give us roughly, um, and they're obviously going to have probably a little bit higher than that because, right, this is only through Q1. So if it's 13 at this point, they're probably going to end up with more than that actually. If trying to think how best way to really think about that is, but right, if they've already, assuming this churn rate's correct, which we don't know, but if they're doing 13 in one quarter, I mean, I don't want to take as easy as saying times 4. Maybe we'll just like multiply it by 3, assume it kind of slows down. Because, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll do it by 4. That's fine. Um, maybe they still do grow it off of last year. Q1 seems to be trending that way. And then let's copy that over. So 37% new user growth. And then I think that's fair, and we'll just minus, let's call it 10% a year until we get something back closer to 2019. And then we're going to hold that flat. I think they've probably gained a lot of momentum from Etsy, a lot of word of mouth. But will they be able to sustain that long term? I don't know. And who knows how many active buyers this gives them. 831 million. So that's huge. That's too many. They're right with probably a majority of your sales being in the US. You're kind of capped at, the US population of what, 300 or 400 million people. Right, let's see. US population. 330 million. So what you're capped at. Call it expansion into Europe. Let's So capped at a billion people, more or less. Um, you're not going to get that high. So I think either the churn rate's got to go up or the growth of new users has to go down. So maybe we do this minus 20%. Let's see what this gets us to. That still seems high. 60% of the population. And obviously, I mean, there's like Asia Pacific and some other places in there that they can definitely expand to. Maybe we just, I don't know. I think this is a tough one because I think until we have more data, it's hard to say for sure um, how these things are really going to kind of shake out. But we'll just call it 600 million users for now. I don't know if we really have a better way to kind of look at it. And then we could look at like marketplace revenue per buyer, which we'll do this. So like 16 bucks a person. Just leave it at that for now. Right, so this is kind of, I would call this a second approach to look at how to get revenue. And then we could do, now we do marketplace revenue. It's just going to be a function of, right, this times this. And then if we copy over our service revenue, which we've calculated out as a percentage of sellers on the platform, then we'll have total revenue. So I think these are kind of the two ways you could look at this. Obviously, there's probably more ways. I'm sure there's smarter people than me that have looked at this. But we'll just kind of look real quick what are two different. And honestly, if you look at that, you get pretty similar things, right? A GMV growing at similar rates gets you to 10 billion in revenue. And then if we do this user-based valuation without any expansion on the average purchase price, which I mean, this would actually probably go down. Obviously, the more users you have, the average price is going to go down because there's going to be a few people that just buy something cheap and move on. But right, you're getting 10 to 12 billion in revenue, which is probably a fair sensitivity and probably what we'll use in our model when we build out the rest of it. So I think we'll leave the video here for now. Hope you found this interesting or helpful. I know this was longer than I was hoping it would be, but interesting when I kind of started thinking through it and typing on the page of how we can model this out. But I think those are kind of the two ways to really look at this. And I'll put this model in the description. There'll be a link to it. It's not going to be completed yet. I'll be building out the DCF over this weekend. So if you go to those tabs, it'll be broken for now, but I'll update a new DCF early next week for that. So thanks for tuning in and let me know if you have any questions.